The text message glowed accusingly on Derek's phone screen. "Tonight was amazing. Can't wait to see you again soon. X. Alex." My heart lurched into my throat as I stared at the provocative words, a knot of dread tightening in my gut. "Who the hell is Alex?" I asked, my voice sharp enough to cut glass. Derek glanced up from his laptop, his handsome face a mask of innocence. "What are you talking about?" I thrust the phone at him. "Don't play dumb with me. Who is she and why is she sending you flirty texts in the middle of the night?" He barely looked at the screen before tossing the phone aside with an eye roll. "Relax, Cora. It's just a work thing. Alex is a colleague." At 1 a.m., talking about how amazing tonight was? Hot fury roiled through me. "Do you really expect me to believe that?" "Believe what you want," he said coolly, turning back to his computer. "You're blowing this way out of proportion." I snatched the phone up again, my fingers trembling as I scrolled through more messages. Each one was like a knife blade to the heart. Inside jokes, winky faces, references to clandestine meetings. The evidence of my husband's betrayal mounted before my very eyes. "A year," I whispered, horror dawning as I pieced together the timeline. "These go back an entire year. How could you?" His shoulders stiffened, but he didn't look up. "You're being ridiculous. I'm not having this conversation." "No, we are definitely having this conversation." I grabbed his laptop and slammed it shut. He opened his mouth to protest, but I cut him off, waving the phone in his face. "Explain this, Derek. Explain to me how your coworker is sending you texts about secret hookups and lacy red lingerie. Tell me this isn't what it looks like." For a long moment, he just stared at me, his face unreadable. Then he slowly stood up, towering over me. "You want the truth?" His voice was low and dangerous. "Fine. Yes, Alex and I are sleeping together, have been for months. And you know what? I don't regret a damn thing." The words slammed into me like a physical blow. I stumbled back, bile rising in my throat. "How could you?" I choked out. "After everything we've been through together, how could you throw it all away like this?" He barked a humorless laugh. "Don't act so high and mighty, Cora. Our marriage has been a sham for years. You're always working, always nagging me, never giving me a moment's peace. With Alex, I can actually breathe." Tears blurred my vision as his cruel words carved me hollow. I wanted to scream, to rage at him, to throw something, but I felt paralyzed, gutted, like he had reached in and ripped out everything that mattered. "I think you should go," I finally managed to whisper. "Get out of my sight before I do something we'll both regret." He smirked, grabbing his keys off the counter. "Best idea you've had in a long time. Don't wait up." The door slammed behind him with a boom of finality. I sank to the floor, buried my head in my hands, and let the floodgates burst open. Sobs racked my body as the perfect life I thought I had shattered around me like broken glass. How had it come to this? When did my marriage, my whole world, start crumbling without me even realizing it? The questions swirled in my mind, sharp and relentless. But one thing crystallized through the haze of anguish and fury. Derek would pay for this betrayal. If it was the last thing I did, I would make him regret the day he broke our vows and shattered my heart. This was only the beginning. The next morning I woke up with puffy eyes and a throbbing headache, the remnants of a sleepless night spent alternating between crying and seething. Derek's side of the bed was cold and empty, a stark reminder of the bombshell he had dropped on our marriage. I dragged myself out of bed and into the shower, letting the scalding water wash away the tears and the lingering scent of Derek's cologne. As I stood under the spray, a steely resolve settled over me. I refused to be the victim in this story. It was time to take action. My first call was to Lena, my ride-or-die best friend since college. She picked up on the second ring, her voice thick with sleep. "Cora, it's barely 7 a.m. This better be good. Derek's cheating on me," I said flatly. "I found the text last night. It's been going on for a year." Silence stretched across the line for a beat, then Lena exploded. "That slimy lying snake! I'll kill him. I'll rip him limb from limb with my bare hands." Despite everything, a small smile tugged at my lips. Lena's loyalty was fierce and unwavering. "I need you to help me dig up dirt on him and his mistress. This is war, and I intend to win it." "Consider it done," Lena said grimly. "I've got your back, always. That scumbag picked the wrong woman to screw over." We spent the morning huddled over our laptops and phones, piecing together the sordid details of Derek's affair. Lena worked her social media magic, scouring profiles and timelines for incriminating evidence. I hacked into Derek's email, my stomach turning as I scrolled through months of explicit messages and hotel reservations. The picture that emerged was even worse than I had imagined. Alexis Reed, a leggy blonde, 10 years Derek's junior, worked as a junior associate at his law firm. Their affair had started as flirty banter over happy-hour drinks and quickly escalated into clandestine hookups in seedy motels and weekend getaways disguised as business trips. "That snake," Lena hissed as we pored over the damning evidence. "He's been living a double life this whole time, betraying you at every turn." I nodded grimly, a cold fury crystallizing in my veins. "And now it's time to make him pay." We were deep in plotting mode when the front door slammed light, announcing Derek's return. He sauntered into the kitchen, his hair mussed and his shirt wrinkled. The stench of stale perfume clung to him like a second skin. "Well, well, look what the cat dragged in," I said icily, crossing my arms. "Have a good night with your mistress?" His eyes narrowed. "Don't start, Cora. I told you it's not what you think." "Oh, so you didn't spend the night screwing your perky little secretary?" "The receipts beg to differ." I threw a stack of printed emails onto the counter. They fanned out like a dirty deck of cards, spelling out his betrayal in black and white. Derek blanched, his mouth opening and closing like a landed fish. "Where did you get those?" "You had no right." "I had every right," I snarled, slamming my hand down on the counter. "I'm your wife, Derek. Or did you forget that when you were shacking up with your office slut?" His face twisted with rage. "Watch your mouth? You have no idea what you're talking about." "I know exactly what I'm talking about," I shot back. "Sneaking around behind my back, funneling money into a secret account, planning a new life with her. Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" For a moment, he looked almost guilty, but then his eyes hardened and he straightened up, squaring his shoulders. "You know what? Fine. You caught me. But if you were half the wife Alexis is, maybe I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere." His words sliced through me like razors, but I refused to let the pain show on my face. I would not give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. "Get out," I said quietly, deadly calm. "Get out of my house and my life. I'll be seeing you in court." The slamming of the front door echoed through the house like a gunshot, punctuating Derek's exit. I stood in the kitchen, my heart racing and my hands shaking with a toxic cocktail of fury and adrenaline. Lena placed a steadying hand on my shoulder. "You okay?" she asked gently. I shook my head, blinking back the hot tears that threatened to spill over. "No, but I will be, once I make that bastard pay for what he's done." We spent the rest of the day in full revenge mode, combing through the evidence we'd gathered and crafting a meticulous plan to expose Derek's misdeeds. Lena suggested hiring a private investigator to dig up even more dirt, but I balked at the idea of inviting a stranger into this personal hell. "I can do it myself," I insisted, my jaw set with determination. "I need to be the one to take him down, to show him that he messed with the wrong woman." Lena nodded, her eyes glinting with a fierce loyalty. "Just be careful, Cor. Derek's a snake, but he's a smart one. Don't underestimate him." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with an incoming text. It was from Derek. "We need to talk. I'm coming over." I showed Lena the message, my lip curling in disgust. "Speak of the devil. He probably wants to try and smooth things over, play the victim card." "Don't let him," Lena warned. "He'll twist everything around and make you doubt yourself. Stand your ground." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation to come. "Don't worry, I'm done falling for his lies." Half an hour later, Derek walked through the door, his expression a carefully crafted mask of contrition. "Cora, baby, I'm so sorry," he started, reaching for me. "I never meant to hurt you." I recoiled from his touch, crossing my arms defensively. "Spare me the bullshit, Derek. You're not sorry you did it. You're sorry you got caught." His eyes flashed with irritation before he quickly smoothed his features back into a look of wounded sincerity. "That's not true. I love you, Cora. What happened with Alexis? It was a mistake. A stupid, reckless mistake." A harsh laugh escaped my throat. "A mistake? A year-long affair with your secretary is a mistake? Draining our savings account to buy her expensive gifts and fancy vacations is a mistake?" His face paled as he realized the extent of what I knew. "Have you been spying on me?" "I didn't have to," I spat. You weren't exactly subtle about it. Did you really think I wouldn't notice the mysterious charges on our credit card bill? The late nights at the office that never seemed to result in any actual work getting done? Derek dragged a hand over his face, his mask slipping to reveal a hint of the ugly anger lurking beneath. You're being irrational. It wasn't like that. Alexis and I, we have a connection. She understands me in a way you never could. White-hot rage surged through my veins. Don't you dare try to justify this. There is no excuse for what you've done. You betrayed me, our marriage, everything we built together. Oh, please, he scoffed. Our marriage has been a joke for years. You're always nagging me, always on my case about every little thing. It's exhausting. At least Alexis appreciates me. I reeled back as if he had slapped me, my heart shattering into a million jagged pieces. Get out, I whispered, my voice deadly calm. Get out of my house and don't come back. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. A flicker of fear crossed his face before it twisted into an ugly sneer. Fine. Have it your way, but don't think for a second that you're going to come out on top here. I'll bury you in court. As the door slammed behind him for the second time that day, I collapsed onto the couch, as my entire body shaking with a potent mix of heartbreak and fury. The gloves were off now. Derek wanted to play dirty? Fine, could play dirty too. And I'd make damn sure I was the one left standing when the dust settled. The next few days passed in a blur of secret phone calls, clandestine meetings, and careful strategizing. While Derek swanned around town with his mistress, flaunting their affair like a badge of honor, I quietly laid the groundwork for his downfall. My first unexpected ally came in the form of Elise, Derek's older sister. She showed up on my doorstep unannounced one evening, her face lined with concern. I heard about what happened, she said without preamble as I let her in. I'm so sorry, Cora. My brother is a fool. I blinked in surprise, thrown off balance by her blunt words. Elise and I had always had a cordial relationship, but we weren't particularly close. Thanks, I managed. That means a lot. She fixed me with a piercing stare, her eyes so like Derek's that it made my heart ache. I'm not here just to offer condolences. I want to help you nail the bastard to the wall. A startled laugh escaped my lips. I'm sorry, what? Elise leaned forward, her expression deadly serious. Derek has always been a selfish prick, even when we were kids. I've watched him charm and manipulate his way through life, never facing consequences for his actions. It's time that changed. Hope flared in my chest, bright and fierce. With Elise on my side, I stood a real chance of making Derek pay for his betrayal. What did you have in mind? A slow smile spread across her face. I have some ideas, but first, there are some things you should know about my dear brother's past indiscretions. Over the next hour, Elise laid out a trail of infidelities and deceptions that stretched back years. Affairs with coworkers, flings with clients, even a drunken hookup with a stripper at his bachelor party. Each revelation was like a knife to the gut, twisting deeper with every sordid detail. I had no idea, I whispered, numb with shock and disgust. How could I have been so blind? Elise reached out and squeezed my hand, her grip strong and reassuring. He's very good at hiding his tracks. But not good enough. Not anymore. Armed with this new information and Elise's support, I threw myself into plotting Derek's comeuppance with renewed vigor. Lena was thrilled to have another ally in our corner, especially one with insider knowledge. We need to hit him where it hurts, she declared as we pored over our growing dossier of evidence. His reputation, his career, his precious public image. Make it so he can't show his face in this town without being haunted by his own misdeeds. I nodded grimly, a cold determination settling over me like armor. And I know just how to do it. The plan began to take shape, as intricate and delicate as a spider's web. We would lay the trap at Derek's upcoming birthday party, a lavish affair he had planned to cement his status as a rising star at his law firm. In front of all his colleagues, friends, and family, we would expose his true colors in spectacular fashion. It was a risk, I knew. If we played our cards wrong, it could all blow up in our faces. But the thought of seeing the look on Derek's face when he realized he had been beaten at his own game was too tempting to resist. Late one night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Elise's parting words echoed in my mind. He doesn't deserve you, Cora. He never did. It's time to show the world who you really are. A force to be reckoned with. I closed my eyes, picturing the moment of truth, the shock and outrage on Derek's face, the vindication of finally making him answer for his crimes. It was a long road ahead, but for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a flicker of something that might have been hope. Watch out, Derek. Your reckoning is coming. And her name is Cora Bennett. The week leading up to Derek's birthday party was a whirlwind of covert operations and meticulous planning. Elise, Lena, and I met in secret, fine-tuning every detail of our grand scheme. We compiled a dossier of evidence that laid bare Derek's web of lies and infidelities, explicit text messages, incriminating photos, even a few damning voice recordings, courtesy of Elise's PI friend. It was a veritable treasure trove of betrayal, and I couldn't wait to unleash it on the unsuspecting partygoers. Lena took charge of the technical aspects, putting together a slideshow that would expose Derek's misdeeds in humiliating fashion. She even managed to hack into his email and uncover a trail of money transfers to a secret offshore account. "Bastard's been siphoning funds for months," she spat, her fingers flying over the keyboard. "Probably planning to run off with his little side piece and leave you high and dry." Rage boiled in my veins, hot and corrosive. Not if I have anything to say about it. As the party drew near, I threw myself into the role of dutiful wife, helping Derek plan the celebration with a smile on my face and vengeance in my heart. He remained blissfully unaware of the storm gathering on the horizon, too caught up in his own ego to notice the danger signs. The night before the party, as we lay in bed, he reached for me with a lecherous grin. "How about a little pre-birthday surprise?" he purred, his hand sliding up my thigh. I fought back a shudder of revulsion and forced a coy smile. "Patience, baby. I've got something extra special planned for tomorrow night. Wouldn't want to ruin the surprise." His eyes gleamed with anticipation. "I like the sound of that. You know how much I love your surprises. If only you knew," I thought grimly. The day of the party dawned bright and clear, a perfect contrast to the dark storm brewing inside me. I went through the motions of getting ready, my mind buzzing with a heady mix of nerves and exhilaration. Lena and Elise arrived early to help with the final preparations, exchanging tense smiles and meaningful looks as we worked. The air crackled with a sense of impending chaos, like the calm before a hurricane. As the first guests began to arrive, I plastered on my most charming smile and played the role of gracious hostess to perfection. Derek held court by the bar, regaling his adoring audience with tales of his latest courtroom triumphs. I watched him work the room, all smooth charm and easy confidence, and felt a swell of vicious satisfaction. "Enjoy it while you can, you smug bastard. Your reign ends tonight." The party was in full swing when Elise caught my eye from across the room, giving me a subtle nod. It was time. I made my way to the front of the room, clinking my glass to get everyone's attention. "Can I have everyone's attention, please? I'd like to say a few words." A hush fell over the crowd as all eyes turned to me expectantly. Derek shot me a questioning look, but I ignored him, my gaze sweeping over the sea of faces. "First of all, I want to thank you all for coming tonight to celebrate my wonderful husband," I began, my voice dripping with false sincerity. "Derek is an incredible man, successful, charming, loved by all who know him." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room, and Derek preened under the praise, his chest puffing out with pride. I let the moment hang for a beat before my smile turned sharp and cutting. But there's another side to Derek that most of you don't know about, a side that lies, cheats, and betrays those closest to him without a second thought. Confusion flickered across Derek's face as I spoke, quickly morphing into anger as realization began to dawn. "Cora," he warned, his voice low and dangerous. "What the hell are you doing?" I ignored him, nodding to Lena, who stood poised by the projector. "I think it's time everyone saw the real Derek Bennett. Roll the tape." The first slide flashed onto the screen behind me, and the room erupted into chaos. The projector hummed to life, casting a harsh light across the stunned faces of the partygoers. One by one, the damning slides flashed across the screen. Intimate photos of Derek and Alexis, screenshots of explicit text messages, bank statements detailing his secret transfers. Derek's face drained of color as he watched his dirty laundry being aired for all to see. His eyes darted wildly around the room, seeking an escape, but there was none to be found. "What the fuck is this?" he snarled, rounding on me with fury in his eyes. You crazy bitch, turn it off! I stood my ground, my chin lifted in defiance. What's the matter, Derek? Afraid everyone will see what a lying, cheating scumbag you really are? He lunged for me but was intercepted by Elise, who stepped smoothly into his path. Ah, little brother, the show's not over yet. The final slide clicked into place, a giant red heart with the words, "Happy Birthday, Derek," scrawled across it in mocking cursive. The room fell silent for a beat, the tension stretching taut as a bowstring. Then the murmurs started, shocked whispers swelling to a dull roar as the truth sank in. Derek stood frozen, his fists clenched and his face twisted with impotent rage. "Derek, is this true?" A portly man in an expensive suit stepped forward, his brow furrowed in disapproval. I recognized him as Derek's boss, a senior partner at the law firm. Derek opened his mouth, a denial hot on his tongue, but the words died in his throat as he met the man's steely gaze. I can't explain," he stammered, but it was clear that no explanation would suffice. "I'm disappointed in you, Bennett." His boss said coldly, "I thought you were a man of integrity. It seems I was mistaken." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd as Derek's colleagues and clients turned their backs on him, their faces etched with disgust. He looked around wildly, searching for a friendly face, but found only condemnation. "Please, just let me explain," he begged, his voice cracking with desperation, but no one wanted to hear it. Alexis, who had been watching the scene unfold with a stricken expression, chose that moment to bolt for the door, her heels clattering on the hardwood floor. Derek called after her, but she didn't look back, vanishing into the night without a backward glance. And then it was just Derek, standing alone in the center of the room, the shattered remnants of his once charmed life scattered at his feet. I walked up to him slowly, my heels clicking on the floor like gunshots. He flinched as I drew near, shrinking away from the icy fury in my eyes. "How does it feel?" I asked softly, my voice trembling with barely suppressed rage. "To have everything you've ever worked for, everything you've ever cared about, ripped away in an instant? To know that you've lost it all because of your own selfish, despicable actions?" "Cora, please," he whispered, his eyes glassy with unshed tears. "I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you." A harsh laugh tore from my throat. "Spare me the crocodile tears, Derek. We both know you're only sorry you got caught." I leaned in close, my lips brushing his ear. "I loved you, you know. I would have done anything for you, but you threw it all away for a cheap thrill with your secretary, and now you're going to pay the price." He shuddered, a broken sob escaping his lips. "What are you going to do?" I smiled, cold and sharp as a knife's edge. "Oh, my dear husband, you have no idea what I'm capable of." With that, I turned on my heel and walked away, leaving him to wallow in the ruins of his once perfect life. The trap had been sprung. The mighty Derek Bennett had fallen, and I had never felt more alive. The fallout from the party was swift and brutal. Within days, the news of Derek's disgrace had spread like wildfire through our social circles and beyond. Whispers followed him wherever he went, judgmental stares and scathing remarks dogging his every step. At work, the consequences were even more severe. His boss called him into his office the morning after the party, his face grim and his tone unforgiving. "I'm putting you on administrative leave, effective immediately," he said, sliding a sheaf of papers across the desk. "The firm can't afford to be associated with this kind of scandal. You're lucky I don't fire you outright." Derek's face paled as he reached for the papers with a trembling hand. "Sir, please. I can fix this. Just give me a chance to explain." His boss shook his head, his expression implacable. "There's nothing to explain, Bennett. Your actions speak for themselves. Take the leave, get your shit together, and pray that this blows over. But don't expect any favors from me or anyone else at this firm." Defeated, Derek slunk out of the office like a whipped dog, his tail tucked between his legs. I watched from the shadows, a thrill of vicious satisfaction coursing through my veins. That afternoon, Elise and Lena took me out to celebrate our victory. We clinked glasses of champagne, giddy with the rush of revenge fulfilled. "God, did you see his face?" Lena crowed, her eyes bright with malicious glee. "I thought he was going to piss himself right there on the floor." Elise laughed, tossing her hair over her shoulder. "Serves him right, the arrogant prick. I've been waiting years to see him get his comeuppance." I sipped my champagne, letting the bubbles dance on my tongue. It's not over yet, ladies. There's still one more loose end to tie up. Their eyes met mine, alight with understanding. The divorce, Elise said, her voice low and serious. Are you ready for that fight? I set my glass down, my smile sharp as a blade. I was born ready. He wants to play hardball? I'll bury him. That night, I sat Derek down and laid out my terms. He sat across from me at the kitchen table, his shoulders slumped and his eyes hollow. I want a divorce, I said flatly, sliding a stack of papers across the table. I've already had my lawyer draw up the paperwork. All you have to do is sign. He stared at the papers like they were a coiled snake, ready to strike. Cora, please, can't we talk about this? I know I fucked up, but I can change. I can be better. I barked a harsh laugh. Spare me the act, Derek. We both know you're not capable of change. You're a liar and a cheat, and that's all you'll ever be. He flinched as if I'd slapped him, his eyes welling with tears. I love you, Cora. Doesn't that count for anything? You don't know the meaning of the word, I spat, my voice trembling with rage. If you loved me, you never would have betrayed me the way you did. You never would have shattered our marriage like it meant nothing. He reached for me, but I recoiled, revulsion etched into every line of my face. Don't touch me. Don't ever fucking touch me again. Sighing, he picked up the pen with a shaking hand. Is this really what you want? To throw away everything we've built together? I met his gaze, my eyes hard and unyielding. You threw it away the moment you stuck your dick in another woman. I'm just finishing what you started. He signed the papers in silence, his shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. I watched him coldly, feeling nothing but a grim sense of satisfaction. It was done. The final nail in the coffin of our farce of a marriage. I was free. Free from his lies, his betrayals, his poisonous presence in my life, and I had never felt more alive. The divorce proceedings were a blur of legal jargon and bitter accusations, each side fighting tooth and nail for every scrap of assets and advantage. Derek, ever the sore loser, tried every dirty trick in the book to paint me as the villain, the unstable wife who drove him into another woman's arms. But I had truth on my side, and a crack team of lawyers who ate his pathetic arguments for breakfast. In the end, the judge saw through his lies and manipulation, granting me a generous settlement and the satisfaction of watching Derek slink out of the courtroom like a beaten dog. As I walked out of the courthouse, my head held high and my divorce papers clutched tightly in my hand, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It was over. I was free. Lena was waiting for me on the steps, a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses in hand. Congratulations, babe, she crowed, pulling me into a fierce hug. You did it. You're officially a free woman. I laughed, my heart feeling lighter than it had in years. Damn right I am, and I couldn't have done it without you and Elise. I owe you both everything. We popped the champagne, the bubbles fizzing over our hands as we poured 2 generous glasses. To new beginnings, Lena said, clinking her glass against mine, and to the power of women scorned. I grinned, taking a deep sip of the effervescent liquid. It tasted like victory, like vindication, like the start of a whole new chapter. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into rebuilding my life. I found a new apartment, a sunny loft in the heart of downtown that felt like a haven after the oppressive gloom of the house I'd shared with Derek. I poured my energy into my work, taking on new clients and projects with a renewed sense of purpose. And slowly but surely, I started to heal. The pain of Derek's betrayal still stung, a dull ache that flared up in the quiet moments, but it no longer consumed me. I had survived, and I was stronger for it. One day, as I was leaving the office, I ran into Derek on the street. He looked haggard, his suit rumpled, and his eyes bloodshot. For a moment, I felt a flicker of pity for the broken man he had become. But then he opened his mouth, and any shred of sympathy I might have felt evaporated like mist in the sun. Cora, he said, his voice rough and slurred. I miss you. I made a mistake. Can't we just talk about this? I stared at him incredulously, a harsh laugh bubbling up in my throat. Are you serious right now? After everything you've done, you have the nerve to ask for another chance? He reached for me, his eyes pleading. I still love you, Cor. I know I fucked up, but we can fix this. We can start over. I slapped his hand away, my face twisting with disgust. You don't get to call me that anymore. You don't get to pretend like we can just erase the past and start fresh. You made your choices, Derek. Now you have to live with them. I turned to walk away, but his next words stopped me in my tracks. You ruined my life, you vindictive bitch. I hope you're happy now. Slowly, I pivoted back to face him, my eyes narrowed to icy slits. I am happy, Derek. Happy to be rid of you and your toxic bullshit. Happy to finally be free of the lies and the cheating and the gaslighting. You didn't ruin my life, Derek. You just made me realize how strong I am without you. With that, I turned on my heel and walked away, my head high and my heart full. I didn't look back. That night, Elise and Lena took me out to celebrate my new life. We clinked glasses of red wine and traded stories of triumph over adversity, of women who had risen from the ashes of betrayal to build something beautiful and strong. As I looked around at their smiling faces, I felt a surge of gratitude and love, so powerful it nearly took my breath away. These women, my sisters in arms, had been my rock through the darkest of times. With them by my side, I knew I could weather any storm. The future stretched out before me, bright and full of promise. I had no idea what it held, but for the first time in a long time, I was excited to find out. Because I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, I would face them with my head held high and my heart unbroken. I was Cora fucking Bennett, and I was unbreakable. I never knew silence could be so loud until I watched my brother's facade crumble, revealing a stranger beneath. The words seemed to echo in the stillness of the room, hanging like a dense fog after Marla's venomous attack on our mother, Elaine. Her lips curled into a smirk as she taunted, "You're just too meek and insignificant to stand up for yourself." I glanced at Everett, my brother, expecting him to defend our gentle mother, but he remained impassive. A hollow shell of the man I once knew. It was as if Marla's venom had seeped into his veins, numbing him to her cruelty. Rage boiled within me, and I found myself stepping forward, fists clenched. "How dare you speak to her that way?" I spat, my voice trembling with fury. Marla's eyes narrowed, and she sneered. "Stay out of this, Cadence. It doesn't concern you." "Like hell it doesn't," I roared, closing the distance between us. "That's my mother you're berating, and I won't stand for it." Everett finally stirred, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Cadence, please, let it go." I shrugged him off, incredulous. "Let it go? Are you hearing yourself? She's treating Mom like garbage, and you're just letting it happen." Marla's laughter cut through the tension like a knife. "Poor, pathetic Elaine. She's lucky I even bother with her." She turned to Everett, her voice dripping with saccharine venom. "You see how she is, darling? Always needing to be coddled and fawned over." Everett's gaze dropped, and he nodded meekly, like a puppy being scolded. My heart broke for the brother I once knew, the confident, caring man who would have never tolerated such abuse. "Enough!" I roared, stepping between them. "I don't know what kind of twisted game you're playing, Marla, but it ends now. You will treat my mother with respect, or you can pack your bags and leave." Marla's eyes with fury, and for a moment I thought she might strike me. But then, as quickly as the storm had gathered, it dissipated, and she offered a sickly sweet smile. "Of course, Cadence, you're absolutely right. I'll be sure to watch my tongue around dear Elaine from now on." She swept past me, brushing my shoulder with hers as she exited the room. Everett followed her like a lost puppy, leaving me alone with my stunned mother. I gathered her into my arms, feeling her frail body tremble with silent sobs. "It's okay, Mom," I murmured, stroking her graying hair. "I won't let her hurt you anymore." As I held her close, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Marla's true nature had been revealed, and I knew in my heart that I had to protect my family, no matter the cost. The next few days were like walking on eggshells, each interaction fraught with tension. Marla's saccharine smiles were laced with venom, and Everett remained a hollow shell, refusing to acknowledge the rift that had formed. It wasn't until I stopped by Mom's house unannounced that the full extent of Marla's villainy became apparent. "Mom?" I called out as I stepped inside, taken aback by the unusual disarray. Dishes were piled high in the sink, and the floors were in desperate need of a vacuum. "In here, dear," came her weary voice from the living room. I found her slumped in her favorite armchair, a blanket draped over her lap as she knitted what appeared to be a scarf. Dark circles hung beneath her eyes, and her movements were slow and labored. "Mom, are you all right?" I asked, crossing the room to her side. She offered a faint smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Of course, darling, just a bit tired, that's all. I frowned, taking in her disheveled appearance and the state of the house. Have you been cooking and cleaning for Everett and Marla again? Her gaze dropped, and she nodded almost imperceptibly. White-hot anger flared within me. That's it. I'm putting a stop to this right now. Before she could protest, I was out the door and marching down the street towards Everett's place. I pounded on the door, barely containing my fury. Everett answered, his brow furrowed in confusion. Cadence? What's going on? What's going on? I echoed, jabbing a finger into his chest. Your wife is running my mother ragged. That's what's going on. His eyes widened, and he glanced over his shoulder as if afraid Marla might overhear. Keep your voice down, he hissed, stepping outside and pulling the door shut behind him. I won't keep my voice down, I shouted, uncaring of who might hear. Mom is exhausted, Everett. She's cooking, cleaning, and running herself into the ground just to keep Marla happy. He ran a hand over his face, his expression pained. I know. But Marla, she gets upset if things aren't just so. I stared at him, aghast. Are you hearing yourself? You're letting her walk all over Mom because she throws a tantrum if she doesn't get her way? Everett's shoulders slumped, and he dropped his gaze. It's not that simple, Cadence. Marla, she has a way of making things difficult if I don't go along with what she wants. My hands balled into fists at my sides. So what, you're just going to let her bully and manipulate all of us? Stand up for yourself, Everett. Stand up for our family. His jaw clenched, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I saw a flicker of the brother I once knew. But then, just as quickly, it was gone, and he shook his head warily. I can't, Cadence. I'm sorry. With those words, he retreated back into the house, leaving me seething on the doorstep. As I stormed away, I knew that this was only the beginning. Marla's twisted grip on my family was tightening, and I had to find a way to break it before it was too late. Frustration gnawed at me in the days that followed. Everett's submission to Marla's twisted demands was like watching a man slowly drown, and I knew I had to act before it was too late. We need to find out more about her. I told Theo one evening as we prepared dinner. My husband's brow furrowed, but he nodded, sensing the resolve in my voice. That night, after the dishes were done, we began our search. Scouring the internet for any trace of Marla's past, we slowly pieced together a disturbing pattern. Look at this, Theo murmured, his eyes glued to the screen. It seems Marla was briefly married to a wealthy businessman a few years back. But the marriage only lasted 6 months before he filed for divorce, citing emotional distress and manipulation. I leaned closer, my heart sinking as I read the details. And here's another. She was engaged to a prominent lawyer, but he broke it off after discovering she'd been lying about her background and finances. Page after page painted a chilling portrait of a woman who thrived on deceit and exploitation. Marla would charm and seduce wealthy men, leeching off their fortunes until they inevitably saw through her facade. Then she would move on to her next target, leaving a trail of broken hearts and empty bank accounts in her wake. She's a black widow, I whispered, feeling ill, and Everett is her latest victim. Theo squeezed my hand, his expression grim. We have to show him, Cadence. We have to make him see the truth before it's too late. I nodded, my jaw set with determination. The next day, I invited Everett over under the guise of a casual family dinner. As we sat around the table, I could see the tension in his posture, the way his eyes kept flicking towards the door, as if he expected Marla to burst in at any moment. Everett, I began, keeping my voice level. We need to talk about Marla. He stiffened, his knuckles whitening as he gripped the edge of the table. What about her? I took a steadying breath and launched into the details we'd uncovered, the string of failed marriages and broken engagements, the pattern of exploitation and deceit. As I spoke, I watched the color drain from Everett's face. He shook his head vehemently, his eyes wide with denial. No, you've got it all wrong. Marla would never. But the evidence was irrefutable, and with each new revelation, I could see the cracks in his facade deepening. Finally, when I had laid bare the full extent of Marla's machinations, Everett slumped in his chair, burying his face in his hands. How could I have been so blind? He whispered, his voice thick with anguish. I reached across the table, resting my hand on his arm. It's not too late, Everett. We can stop her before she destroys our family. He lifted his head, and I saw a flicker of the old Everett, the fierce determination that had once burned so brightly. "You're right," he said, his jaw set. "It's time to end this." As we began to formulate our plan, I couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. The veil had been lifted, and now it was time to take back control from the woman who had wrought so much pain and misery. The confrontation with Marla was like a powder keg waiting to ignite. Everett and I had agreed to approach her together, our united front bolstered by the damning evidence we'd uncovered. I could sense Everett's trepidation as we stood on the doorstep of his home, but there was a newfound determination in his eyes that filled me with hope. Marla answered the door, her perfectly coiffed hair and immaculate makeup a stark contrast to the sneer that twisted her features. Well, if it isn't the dynamic duo," she drawled, her gaze flickering between us with thinly veiled disdain. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" "Cut the act, Marla," I spat, pushing past her into the house. "We know what you've been up to." Her brows shot up, but her expression remained infuriatingly smug. "And what, pray tell, have I been up to?" Everett stepped forward, squaring his shoulders. "We know about your past, Marla. The marriages, the engagements, all the men you've manipulated and exploited for their money." For a moment, her mask slipped, and I saw a flicker of panic in her eyes. But just as quickly, it was gone, replaced by a derisive laugh. "Oh, Everett, you can't possibly believe these ridiculous accusations, can you?" She sidled up to him, trailing a manicured hand down his arm. "Your sister is just jealous, darling. She's always resented our happiness." I opened my mouth to protest, but Everett held up a hand, his gaze boring into hers. "Don't bother, Marla," he said, his voice low and steady. "We have proof, documents, records, testimonies from your past victims. It's over." Her eyes narrowed to slits, and for the first time I saw the true depths of her malice laid bare. "You ungrateful wretch," she hissed, her words dripping with venom. "After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me?" Everett remained unmoved, his jaw set in a firm line. "You've done nothing but lie and manipulate, Marla. It ends now." With a snarl of rage, she turned on me, her perfectly manicured nails digging into my arm as she grabbed me. "This is all you're doing, you meddling bitch," she spat, her face contorted in fury. "You're just jealous that your pathetic life will never measure up to mine." Before I could react, Everett had wedged himself between us, his hands gripping Marla's wrists as he pried her away. "That's enough," he growled, his eyes blazing with a fire I hadn't seen in years. "You're done manipulating this family, Marla. It's over." She struggled against his grip, her eyes wild with desperation. "You'll regret this, Everett," she shrieked. "I'll make sure you lose everything, your job, your money, your precious family." But her threats rang hollow, her carefully constructed facade lying in shattered pieces at our feet. As Everett hauled her towards the door, she turned her vitriol on me once more. "You think you've won?" she snarled. "This is far from over, Cadence. Mark my words, you'll pay for this." And with that, she was gone, her angry screams echoing down the street as Everett slammed the door behind her. We stood in silence for a long moment, the weight of what had transpired hanging heavy in the air. Finally, Everett turned to me, his expression a mixture of shame and gratitude. "Thank you," he murmured, pulling me into a fierce embrace. "You saved me from a lifetime of misery." As I held him, I couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph amidst the turmoil. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. Marla's threats still lingered, a reminder that her vindictive nature knew no bounds. But in that moment, with my brother by my side once more, I knew we could weather any storm she threw our way. The family she had tried so desperately to fracture was now stronger than ever, and we would face her wrath together, united and unbreakable. In the days following Marla's explosive departure, a fragile peace settled over our family. Everett seemed lighter, as if a great weight had been lifted from his shoulders, but I knew better than to let my guard down. Marla's parting threat still echoed in my mind, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she was biding her time, plotting her next move. So when Theo came to me one evening, his expression grim, I steeled myself for the worst. "Cadence," he began, settling beside me on the couch. "I think we have a problem." My heart dropped, and I braced myself for whatever bombshell he was about to unleash. "I just got off the phone with your dad," he continued. Apparently, Marla has been pressuring Everett to sell the family home. A chill ran down my spine as the implications sank in. The house wasn't just a building. It was a symbol of our family's legacy, a place where countless memories had been forged. "She's trying to isolate him," I murmured, my hands clenching into fists. "Strip away everything that ties him to us so she can worm her way back in." Theo nodded grimly. "Your dad said Everett has been reluctant, but Marla is relentless. She's playing on his guilt, telling him it's the only way to make a fresh start." White-hot anger surged through me, and I shot to my feet, pacing the length of the living room. "That conniving snake," I spat. "After everything she's done, she still has the audacity to try and tear our family apart." Theo caught my arm, pulling me to a halt. "Cadence, we have to do something. If she succeeds in getting Everett to sell the house, it'll be that much harder to break her hold over him." I took a deep breath, tamping down the fury that threatened to consume me. Theo was right. We needed a plan, a way to make Everett see the truth before it was too late. "Call Dad," I said, my voice steely with resolve. "Tell him we're staging an intervention tonight. It's time to put an end to Marla's games once and for all." A few hours later, we were gathered in the living room of the family home. Mom, Dad, Everett, Theo, and myself. The tension was thick, Everett's eyes darting toward the exits as if he expected Marla to burst through the door at any moment. "What's this all about?" he demanded, his gaze finally landing on me. I took a steadying breath, squaring my shoulders. "It's about Marla," I said, holding his gaze, "and her latest attempt to manipulate you into selling this house." His eyes widened and he opened his mouth to protest, but I forged ahead. "Don't try to deny it, Everett. We know she's been pressuring you, playing on your guilt and insecurities. But can't you see? This is just another ploy to isolate you from your family, to make you dependent on her again." Everett's jaw clenched, and he shook his head vehemently. "You're wrong, Cadence. Marla just wants what's best for us, a fresh start away from all the drama and conflict." I scoffed, feeling the frustration mount. "Wake up, Everett. She's the one causing all the drama and conflict. She's a toxic parasite, and she'll never stop until she's drained every last ounce of life from this family." The words hung heavy in the air, and for a long moment, no one spoke. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw Mom rise from her chair, her face etched with a determination I'd never seen before. "Your sister is right, Everett," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "That woman's caused nothing but pain and misery since the day she wormed her way into our lives." She crossed the room, laying a hand on his arm. "This house is our home, our legacy. Please don't let her take that away from us." Everett's gaze flickered between us, his expression a whirlwind of emotions. I could see the battle raging within him, the struggle between Marla's poisonous influence and the love for his family. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "You're right," he whispered, his voice thick with shame. "I've been so blind, so desperate to make things work with Marla that I've nearly lost everything that truly matters." He looked up, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "I won't let her win, not this time. The house stays, and Marla—" He swallowed hard. "Marla is out of our lives for good." A collective sigh of relief swept through the room, and I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The battle had been hard fought, but in the end, love and loyalty had prevailed over Marla's twisted machinations. As we gathered around Everett, enveloping him in an embrace, I knew that our family was finally on the path to healing. The shadows that had lingered for so long were fading, and a new dawn was on the horizon. One where Marla's poisonous influence could no longer reach us. The day of Mom's birthday celebration dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the storm that was brewing beneath the surface. As I helped her prepare for the party, arranging platters of her famous lemon bars and hanging streamers, I couldn't shake the sense of anticipation that buzzed through my veins. This was it. The culmination of weeks of planning, the moment when we would finally expose Marla's true nature to the world and break her hold over Everett once and for all. "You seem tense, dear," Mom murmured, laying a gentle hand on my arm. "Is everything all right?" I forced a smile, giving her hand a reassuring squeeze. "Everything's fine, Mom. Just want to make sure your party is perfect." She returned my smile, her eyes shining with affection. "As long as my family is here, it will be." As the guests began to arrive, the house filled with the sounds of laughter and conversation, a temporary reprieve from the turmoil that had plagued us for far too long. Everett arrived with a hesitant smile, his gaze constantly flicking towards the door as if expecting Marla to make an appearance. "It's going to be all right," I murmured, pulling him aside. "We're going to put an end to her lies once and for all." He nodded, his jaw set with determination, and rejoined the party. As the afternoon wore on, I could feel the tension mounting, the calm before the storm. Finally, when the last of the guests had arrived, I caught Theo's eye and gave him a subtle nod. It was time. Clearing my throat, I clinked my glass, calling for silence. "If I could have everyone's attention, please." The room gradually fell quiet, all eyes turning towards me with a mixture of curiosity and confusion. "First and foremost," I began, "I want to thank you all for coming to celebrate my incredible mother on her birthday." A smattering of applause rippled through the crowd, and Mom ducked her head shyly, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. "However," I continued, my voice growing steely, "there is another reason we've gathered you all here today." I locked eyes with Everett, giving him a subtle nod of encouragement before turning my attention back to the assembled guests. For far too long, a dark shadow has loomed over this family, a poisonous presence that has sought to divide and manipulate us for her own selfish gain. My gaze swept over the crowd, daring anyone to look away. I'm speaking, of course, about Marla. A hush fell over the room, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Everett tense, his knuckles whitening as he gripped the back of a chair. "Marla has woven a tangled web of lies and deceit," I pressed on, my voice ringing with conviction. "She has exploited and preyed upon my brother, leeching off his fortune and manipulating him into cutting ties with those who truly care about him." Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the crowd, but I forged ahead, laying bare the evidence we had gathered, the trail of broken engagements and failed marriages, the testimonies from her past victims. As I spoke, I could see the shock and revulsion etched on the faces of our guests, the realization sinking in that they had been duped by Marla's carefully constructed facade. Finally, when every last sordid detail had been exposed, I turned my gaze to Everett, who stood frozen, his eyes wide with a mixture of shame and relief. "It's over, Everett," I said softly. "You're free of her poison." For a long moment he remained motionless, his chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. Then, slowly, he straightened his shoulders, his features hardening with a newfound resolve. "You're right, Cadence," he said, his voice ringing out across the hushed room. "It's over." Turning on his heel, he strode towards the front door, throwing it open with a resounding bang, and there, frozen on the doorstep with a look of abject horror painted across her features, stood Marla. "You," she sputtered, her perfectly manicured mask cracking as she took in the scene before her. "You can't do this to me." But her protests fell on deaf ears as Everett advanced, his eyes blazing with a fire I hadn't seen in years. "Get out," he growled, his words laced with a finality that brooked no argument. "You're not welcome here. Not anymore." For a beat, Marla seemed poised to argue, her mouth opening and closing like a gasping fish. But as her gaze swept over the sea of accusatory stares, she must have realized the futility of her situation. With a cry of outrage, she whirled on her heel and stormed off into the night, her heels clicking angrily on the pavement as she disappeared from sight. A deafening silence hung in her wake, punctuated only by the occasional murmur or cough. Then, slowly, the tension began to dissipate, replaced by a collective sigh of relief. As I looked around at the faces of my family and friends, I saw nothing but pride and support reflected back at me. We had faced down the darkness that had threatened to consume us, and emerged victorious, battered perhaps, but unbroken. And as Everett turned to me, his eyes shining with unshed tears, I knew that our journey towards healing had truly begun. In the days that followed Marla's explosive banishment from our lives, a palpable shift seemed to ripple through our family. It was as if a great weight had been lifted, a toxic cloud of negativity and manipulation that had hung over us for far too long. Everett, in particular, seemed to undergo a profound transformation. Gone was the haunted, hollow-eyed man who had been so thoroughly cowed by Marla's venom. In his place stood a man reborn, his shoulders squared and his gaze clear and focused. It's like waking from a nightmare, he confided in me one evening as we sat on the porch, sipping lemonade and basking in the warm evening air. All this time, I was living in a fog, blind to the truth and trapped by her lies. I reached over, giving his hand a reassuring squeeze. "You're free of her now, Everett. We all are." He nodded, his expression solemn. I just wish I had seen it sooner, before she had the chance to inflict so much pain and damage. A familiar pang of guilt twisted in my gut, but I pushed it aside. Dwelling on regrets would only hold us back from truly healing. "The important thing is that we made it through," I said firmly, "and now we can focus on rebuilding and moving forward as a family." Everett smiled, the weight of Marla's lingering specter seeming to lift from his shoulders. "You're right. It's a new beginning for all of us." As the days stretched into weeks, the true extent of Marla's deception began to unravel. It seemed that her pattern of exploitation and manipulation had cast a wide net, ensnaring countless victims over the years. One by one, they emerged from the shadows, emboldened by the news of her downfall and eager to share their stories. Tales of emotional abuse, financial ruin, and shattered lives poured forth, painting a chilling portrait of a woman utterly devoid of conscience or remorse. The fallout was swift and merciless. Marla's carefully constructed house of cards came crashing down around her, leaving her social standing in tatters, and her once abundant finances drained to the dregs. Through it all, Everett remained a pillar of strength, weathering the storm with a newfound resilience that inspired us all. Gone was the guilt and shame that had once weighed him down. In its place was a steely determination to make amends and move forward. "I can't change the past," he said during one of our many heart-to-heart conversations, "but I can damn well make sure the future is better for all of us." And true to his word, he did. With an unwavering focus, he set about rebuilding the relationships that Marla had so callously fractured, starting with our parents. It was a long and often painful process, fraught with difficult conversations and emotional revelations. But through it all, our family remained united, a bond forged in the fires of adversity and tempered by our shared determination to triumph over Marla's poisonous legacy. As for my role, I took it upon myself to be the mediator, the calm voice of reason that helped guide our family through the turbulent waters of healing. It wasn't always easy, and there were times when tempers flared and progress seemed elusive. But I persevered, drawing strength from the knowledge that we were finally on the right path, a path that led away from the shadows and towards the light of a brighter future. And as the weeks turned into months, that future began to take shape before our very eyes. The rifts that had once seemed insurmountable slowly knitted themselves together, replaced by a newfound appreciation for the unbreakable bonds that tied us as a family. It was during one of our Sunday dinners, the table laden with Mom's famous pot roast, and the air filled with laughter and conversation, that I truly realized how far we had come. Gazing around at the smiling faces of my loved ones, I felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over me. We had weathered the storm, emerging battered but unbroken, our love and loyalty to one another stronger than ever before. And in that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. A united front, fortified by the knowledge that the darkness that had once threatened to consume us had finally been banished for good. In the aftermath of Marla's explosive departure, a fragile peace settled over our family. It was as if we had all been holding our collective breath, bracing for the next inevitable blow from her twisted machinations. But as the days stretched into weeks and her poisonous presence faded into a distant memory, we slowly began to exhale. Of course, the road to healing was far from smooth. Marla's betrayal had left deep scars, both emotional and financial. Everett, in particular, struggled with the fallout of her deceit, his once thriving business and personal accounts drained to the dregs by her relentless exploitation. "I feel like such a fool," he confided in me one evening, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "How could I have been so blind, so willing to hand over everything I've worked for to that parasite?" I wrapped an arm around his shoulders, offering what comfort I could. "You were manipulated, Everett. She preyed on your trust and twisted your devotion into a weapon against you. But that's over now." He nodded, his jaw clenched with determination. "You're right. It's time to start rebuilding, to take back what she stole from me, from all of us. And rebuild we did, each of us shouldering a share of the burden. Mom and Dad opened their home to Everett, offering him a sanctuary as he sorted through the tangled mess of his finances. Theo, ever the level-headed voice of reason, helped devise a plan to get Everett's business back on track, utilizing his keen business acumen to plug the leaks and stem the tide of financial ruin. As for me, I became the glue that held our fractured family together. I organized weekly dinners, ensuring we all had a regular opportunity to come together and reconnect. I mediated the difficult conversations, lending an understanding ear and offering gentle guidance when tempers flared. It wasn't easy, and there were times when the strain of it all threatened to overwhelm me. But whenever I felt myself wavering, I would think back to those dark days when Marla's poisonous grip had nearly torn us apart, and I would find the strength to persevere. Slowly but surely the cracks began to mend, and our family emerged from the rubble stronger than ever before. Everett's business flourished under Theo's guidance, and he was able to regain his financial footing, a newfound humility and appreciation for the value of hard work shining through. Mom and Dad, too, seemed rejuvenated by the renewed sense of unity that bound us together. Gone were the hollow-eyed resignation and strained silences that had plagued them during Marla's reign of terror. In their place was a warmth and vibrancy that I hadn't seen in years, a reminder of the unbreakable bonds that had sustained our family through countless storms. And as for me, well, I found myself reinvigorated by the knowledge that my unwavering determination had played a pivotal role in our family's salvation. No longer was I content to be a mere bystander in life, watching from the sidelines as others shaped their destinies. I had tasted the power of taking action, of standing up for what was right, and I knew that I could never go back to the way things were before. It was this newfound sense of purpose that drove me to take on a new challenge: the restoration of our family home. The once proud manor had fallen into disrepair during Marla's toxic tenure, its rooms and halls battered by neglect and the weight of her corrosive presence. But now, with her shadow banished and our family united, I saw an opportunity to breathe new life into the heart of our legacy. Enlisting the help of Everett and Theo, we set about the task of restoring the grand old house to its former glory, stripping away the layers of grime and decay to reveal the beauty that had been hidden beneath. It was backbreaking work, filled with long hours and more than a few heated arguments. But through it all, we persevered, fueled by a shared sense of purpose and the knowledge that every nail hammered, every wall sanded, was a tangible symbol of our family's resilience and rebirth. And when the final coat of paint had dried and the last piece of furniture had been carefully arranged, we stood back and marveled at our handiwork. The house fairly glowed, its polished floors and gleaming woodwork a testament to the power of perseverance and love. It was on a warm summer evening, the air thick with the scent of freshly cut grass and blooming flowers, that we gathered on the front porch to celebrate our victory. Mom and Dad, hand in hand, their faces aglow with pride. Everett and Theo, shoulders brushing as they shared a conspiratorial grin. And me, standing in the midst of it all, my heart swelling with a sense of triumph and unbridled joy. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, I raised my glass in a silent toast. To family, to resilience, and to the unbreakable bonds that had carried us through the darkest of storms. For in that moment, bathed in the warmth of the fading light, and surrounded by the people I loved most in this world, I knew that we had truly emerged from the shadows, battered, perhaps, but unbroken and more united than ever before. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with new challenges and obstacles to overcome. But as I looked around at the smiling faces of my loved ones, I felt a surge of confidence and determination. Whatever lay ahead, we would face it together. A family forged in the fires of adversity, tempered by the knowledge that our love and loyalty to one another was unshakable. Marla's poisonous legacy had been purged, and in its place a new chapter was beginning. One written in the bonds of unbreakable family, resilience, and hope for a brighter tomorrow.